Hello, how are you? Good.
Tell her before she dies, want him to come over, y'all come over and I'll show her, yeah. Because that way she can see before she actually purchases one.
What?
Illegal.
Oh. I just want to make sure we had enough seats. Like all set up. We're good. Anybody here YouTube savvy? It's easy, they said. Just hit the buttons, they said.
I've got a 15-year-old, I can bring him in, he'll probably know everything about it.
Probably. Bring him next time. So I know we're live. We are hanging out here at Artisan Cakes and we're getting ready to do all things stenciling. We're waiting on one more person to arrive who's supposed to be here for the workshop. We'll give them just a couple minutes and then we will go 100% live. View channel. There it is at the very top. But you're going to be a movie star.
Yeah. Of what not to do. Examples of do not do like this, ladies.
All right, so I'm going to pop in and just say hi for just a second and be like, hey, everybody. So, hey, everybody. Welcome to Artisan Cakes. We are going to play with stencils in today's workshops. We're going to play with a combination of standard 7 to 4 mil stencils and stick and stay stencils. And you can use all of these techniques on cookies, cakes, even things like petit fours and desserts. We've even used them on chocolate covered desserts before. So we're going to start playing. And everybody's like trying hard not to look at the camera, so I will change that camera angle. All right, so what we have going on today is stenciling. I got to that point already, right? We are going to play with individual stencils. These are not necessarily in repeat, but these are stencils that have a little bit of pattern. And then we're also going to play with repeatable stencils. These are the ones where this side of the line matches up with the other side, so you can just keep on rolling with a pattern. And that's important in stencils. A lot of people buy stencils thinking it's going to be a perfect match and you can go all the way around your cake, but that's not always the case. A lot of times this side does not match up with that side, so then you have to get in with a paintbrush and kind of do some little tricky artwork to make it work together. We're also going to play with some large scale stencils, so you can see how that works today too. And then stick and stay. We were talking about stick and stays just before this started. I love stick and stays. They were great on fondant covered cakes, not so much on buttercream. But the beauty of these is they have just this hint of a sticky back to them. Then when you apply it, and these are like 2 years old, guys. This is maybe even 3 years old. But it's a silicone that has a little touch of stickiness. And when you apply it, it stays put. Wow. And then you can put your stencil over it and then lift it up. Of course, it works best on a slightly aged fondant, a dry fondant. It does not work well on buttercream because it'll pull the buttercream up. It will work really well on royal icing. Yeah. Right now, as far as vendors and brands, Wilton is the only one that actually makes a stick and stay for cake use. And most of them are little cupcake sizes, so they're more decorative. But I'm going to tell you, I actually found this at Hobby Lobby in the Martha Stewart section. And when I saw that they were stick and stay stencils, I was like, yes. So don't be afraid of the stick and stays if you're using them on fondant.
Have you ever found it where it's just blank, where you can cut your own stencil out?
I have not. And I'm not exactly sure what causes that adhesiveness on the back. Mm-hmm. And what's cool about these is it gets gooey, you know, from the royal icing or the buttercream, whatever you're using as a stencil. But all I have to do is take it to the sink, wash it off, and it just slides right off. And then I use a paper towel and just dry off the back slightly, flip it over, and then I am ready to continue stenciling. So those are stick and stays. Those are my favorites. And everybody has a styrofoam round, but this is really to play with buttercream in a minute. You also have a cardboard round. We're actually going to cover our cardboard round with a little bit of fondant. That way you can truly play and see the detail from each stencil. This is Fonderific fondant. It's going to be a little bit easier to manipulate if you toss it into the microwave for a few seconds. One thing I love about the workshops is it really feels fast and furious, doesn't it? I'm like, and go! Go ahead and hand me all your fondant.
I don't have enough fingernails to get that.
No, I was like,
Can you start?
yeah.
What do we do? I'm sorry.
Or just hand me your fondant and you want to toss it in the tub. That way I know for sure. Yeah, just leave it in the plastic in the tub and I'll toss it in the microwave and heat it up for a few seconds. Dun, dun, dun. Nah, just leave it on there. Yeah, that'll hold its shape as it gets slightly squishy. So 10 to 15 second increments is all it takes for the Fonderific. And we're just trying to soften it up a little bit. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I'm gonna keep my day job. And I'll be sweet and turn that off for you. I don't know why no one loves the Arctic. I like the Arctic. That might be it. So I'm just microwaving this 15-second increments, just so it's pliable, and then we're going to roll it out, cover our boards as much as possible, and then we'll cut off the outside edges so that we have a nice little board to work with. I like using practice boards to play around, and then you can always just wipe it off. All right, ladies. I might have to toss mine in the microwave. I didn't think I was going to, but yeah. Yeah, so I would roll it out and then put it onto the practice board.
Roll it out on this.
Yeah, roll it out on the stainless steel surface. You will have to knead it a little bit to get it pliable. The outside edges are going to be a little bit drier than the interior. Right? And if anybody over microwaves their fondant, the beauty of Fonderific, like I really nuked it there, I got distracted, is you just knead it back together.
Okay. Especially as cool as these tables are, it'll break back together.
Yeah, it doesn't take long at all.
Did you ever use that thing called the mat that was real popular online a
Yeah,
few years ago?
I actually have
You
some
got
out there.
some of those,
Mhm.
okay.
I did. It squeaks.
Oh.
I haven't figured out how to fix it yet.
They said we had this done in 10 seconds.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the big one in. But it's really large, so that table over there is a little too narrow.
It's going to take a double wide table.
Yeah, I love my sheeter.
Me too. I really miss it.
All right, and I'm not going to worry about getting mine perfect. I'm just going to put it on here for demonstration purposes. But if you want to perfectly cover your circles, feel free to. And I have some really pretty stencils. I'm just gonna pass these around and down. You guys play with whatever you feel like playing with. So I did get my stencil cutter working. I do. Yep. We cut out the artisan cakes up here on our window this week and gave it a good try. I am working on sourcing the proper blanks. My first purchases, they're a little too thick, so they don't bend as well as I'd like them to. This is one of my favorite stencils. This is a beautiful Moroccan stencil.
It is pretty.
And it's great for the tops of cakes and for the sides. And then I also picked up this stained glass, kind of an Art Deco stained glass feeling. You can also airbrush. Once you get these on your fondant or on your cake, you can come back through and either use a stipple brush or an airbrush or a sponge. You can use paint brushes over it. So there's that guy we have on the sales floor. And then I have one really cool set. And the set includes different designs that are intended to go together for, say, a 4-tier wedding cake. They can be used together or individually. And then I have about a bajillion cookie stencils because I went a little overboard because I love stencils. And then as if that's not enough, I'll start cutting my own designs. I love stencils. Stencils are a great way to get lots of pattern onto a cake quickly and efficiently. And then you can come back and overpipe and detail and add bling. But it's a great way to get consistent patterns in place, ready to go. I'll let you pick and then pass around. And then I don't know what it is about this one that intrigues me. You can, it'll just make it easier to work with. And then I have a deer. Anybody want a deer?
I would like the deer.
So, I really want to do that on a Winter Wonderland cake. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've got a big old, it feels almost like Cinderella carriage.
It looks like.
Yeah, so the large scale, yeah. So this is for the statement on top, and then that's the repeatable pattern.
That would be pretty to do
On a giant.
a crown and do stencil that on a piece of
Yeah,
cupcakes.
I like that. I'll play with that one too. Pass those around.
I've got this little one.
All right, I'll just set it there for whoever needs it. And then I also have this one beautiful repeatable scroll.
Renee gets the stencil, yeah. Ooh, I love that flowers.
And I also have this one
That one's pretty.
and this one.
Ooh, that's pretty too.
No, the great thing about repeat pattern is you literally, since it's a single, you'll just start over and like go across and then do another one. And this one is truly a repeat. So I try to find repeats in the process of, so
That's pretty, I must say.
this little thing right here should match up right back here. So everybody has a little bit of buttercream to play with. You can do buttercream. You can also do ganache. You could do royal icing. I don't use royal icing for most of my stencils because often I have to pop my cakes back to the refrigerator, and I find that the royal icing pulls the moisture and starts bleeding in Arkansas humidity. You can either pipe directly from a bag, or if you prefer to pull from a bowl, you can do that too. I find that an angled spatula is awesome. I love the angled spatula. So the first thing I would do is I would place my stencil onto my cake and position it. And if I'm doing this on the side of the cake, I'm going to use hat pins. And I'm going to pin it down and in place. Not too close to your pattern because it's going to interfere with your ability to spatula. So what I usually do is pin it off to the side out of the repeat. And then you're going to take your spatula and just get a small amount. This is a small amount of the buttercream. And
Back of the spatula?
I like it on the back of the spatula, and then I will run it across my template. And I'm careful not to go too thin, but at the same time not too thick. Does that make any sense? I want to see a little bit through the back. And I cover the entire stencil before I try to lift. Now, if you're using a bag, you basically can just squeeze it right on top and then spread. And the goal is to get a consistent thickness all the way across where you can see that red fondant underneath, but you have enough buttercream on top to not appear pink when you lift it. So right now when I'm looking, this area is a little bit too thin and this area is a little bit too thin. So I'm going to add buttercream in both of those spaces. Now, any of these little ridges from your spatula will show up if you have a large pattern like the deer. So that's when I like to use the flat bench scrapers like this guy and just scrape down the line, being careful not to get down into the fondant area that we don't want to have excess buttercream on. So I'm going to turn it and scrape and turn it and scrape toward the middle of my pattern. Pulled off too much? Yeah. Takes a delicate hand. A delicate, light hand.
So the buttercream is not supposed to exceed the go beyond?
Correct, because then it'll actually show up on your cake itself. That's all right. We're going to scrape and play with more.
Oh, okay, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a test piece for fun, for funsies.
And the other one really counts.
No. The one that's on your cake, that might count. And then when you're ready, when you feel like you have the appropriate amount of thickness, meaning that you've got buttercream across all of your pattern repeat and you can't see through it too much, maybe a little bit, you're going to be ready to lift your stencil. And to lift that stencil, I just gently pull those needles out, and I use 2 fingers to hold the stencil in place as I'm pulling the needle out. Be sure to put those needles someplace where they're not going to get lost. We don't want them to get stuck in cake or buttercream somewhere along the line. I always keep up with how many needles I have on my workstation at any given time.
And Anna, can you look at mine and tell me if they,
That's a good amount. That's perfect.
that-
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even on the sides though.
So when I'm doing my stencil application,
Okay.
I stay right in the middle of the stencil and I stay in that pattern.
Okay. I thought maybe you could only go in one direction. You're saying it's okay
No,
to
it's
go?
okay to go different directions. Perfectly okay. And depending on what kind of spatulas you have, some of those with the tapered, the little narrow ends are perfect for getting into these tighter corner areas.
Oh, yours looks bad.
Yeah.
Except for all the overlay that I
Can you look at this, please?
I can. It might be too thin.
I'm thinking it's too
Yeah,
thin.
too thin.
And what are these?
That is just the fondant.
Just moisture?
No, it's fondant attached to the back. So when you lift it up, it comes off. It's just
But-
where it's touching the fondant.
Okay.
It's
But-
the ridges
Oh,
and the
then,
cardboard.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
But thicker.
Thicker.
Okay.
And sometimes it's actually easier just to use this bag
All right.
Well, I mean, you gotta start at a corner and peel it away. You can't just rip it off.
and then spread that out
So-
very gently. So this is a good thickness.
That's a good thickness, okay.
She said wipe off excess.
This, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So this is just so you can leave them off. because you're nice and attached. So I use this just to get the excess ridges out. If you're doing a large pattern, like Rooney has the deer, so any of those little spatula marks are going to show up. So I just gently pull that toward the center and remove some of those. And Viva paper towel works with this too, guys. So you can let this crust lightly and Viva paper towel it, but we don't want it to crust too much because we can peel our stencil off as we're picking up our stencil piece. That is perfect. All right, as soon as you're ready, you're going to grab the top two corners and you're going to slide your fingers down the sides of your stencil. Take a look at this, down the sides of your stencil, and then you're going to lift straight up. If you try to lift and slide, you're going to smear your pattern. You want it to lift straight up. Did we have success on the first round? Yeah.
Some mistakes.
Yeah. This looks pretty good. Okay, so I don't change anything. Mine has the same thing. So mine has a little bit more thickness in some of the little dandelion polyps. That's when I use Viva paper towel and go boop, 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 boop. You got to make the noises and everything. All right, let me show you Viva paper towel. Viva paper towel are the only white lint-free paper towel that I've ever found on the market. Yeah, with no pattern. And I just take a piece and I roll it up into a gentle little cylinder. And then I come through and I just go boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. And basically that pushes any of the larger lumps back down. Boop, 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 boop.
So you just press down the area that's going to
Yep, roll it up like this. And then I just very carefully tap the tops. Just very carefully tap the tops.
So should I do that on mine?
Yeah, I would say if you have any rough edges,
Okay, so you're, just the whole thing?
I roll it up into a cylinder.
If your hands are wet, it's gonna make your towel wet. You wanna make sure your hands are dry. I'm good.
Oh, that's neat, because it just presses it down.
Yeah, and it just takes no pressure at all. You're going to roll it up and just kind of tap, tap, tap. It's like dusting cosmetics on your cheeks.
Just nice and gentle.
Okay. Good. All right.
So that's stencil one. You guys did great. I'm gonna shoot the camera the other direction. Come on, show off your stencils. Look, yay! They look great, beautiful. So if we want to reuse this fondant, the easiest way to get that buttercream off is literally to scrape it off.
Oh, the back came off.
It does.
Yeah.
And then to clean your stencil, same thing. Just scrape off your excess buttercream. And then for its next use, you would have to make sure that you don't have buttercream on the back. If you have buttercream on the back, take a moment to rinse this in the sink and then dry it with a paper towel, and then you're ready to place it for another round. The next one I wanted to play with are the stick and stays.
It's kind of like going back to,
Yeah.
I really messed up.
Good. No, you didn't mess it up. Just we'll go on to another stencil type, and then this one has so much pattern that we would have to wash it.
Okay.
So we would wash it, dry it, put it back in our next place, and do it again.
So should I just keep it on station?
Yeah, you can sleep right there.
Now I gotta wash mine too.
When you buy stick and stay stencils, you want to keep the acetate backing for storage.
Almost like those window things that you
It
just
is.
put up in the
Yeah, like decals. So you can feel it's slightly sticky on the back side.
Cool.
Yeah, like the vinyl, like the old vinyl stickies. No, I thought I did. Yeah, it's underneath the bowl.
Oh, gotcha.
We're good. You're welcome. So for the stick and stay, you decide on your location. And I'm a little bit weird. If I'm doing a row of these, I kind of start on one side and I work my way around the cake. So I will stick my stick and stay and just gently press the outside edges. And then the same technique, but with smaller amounts of icing because these are so tiny, just on the end of your spatula. And you have to stay inside that pattern. And that's the hard part, staying inside the pattern. Imagine doing this on the side of a cake. The smaller the spatula, the better. Or you can switch to the bag with a flat coupler and just pipe a small amount right over the stencil. All of these have small patterns, which are great for creating your own repeatable design. And once you have your icing in the middle of that stick and stay, no pins required, reach under and pull gently from the bottom or the top up. If you're doing this on real cake, it's actually a little bit easier from the bottom up. And then I check the back. If the back looks pretty clean, I will place it and repeat. I definitely have a little too much icing on this second round, so I'm going to scrape some of that off. I always use my spatula inward toward the center of my stencil. That way I don't accidentally push it off the edge and onto my fondant. And then once you have that pattern, you're going to grab the corners and peel it away. And usually this is the point where I'm like, oh, I'm starting to see icing on the back and I need to wash it. The washing is actually really easy, especially for these little guys. I lay it flat on a surface so I don't accidentally pull or snag any of the scroll work out. And I just gently scrape my icing off. And then I wash it in the sink. Dawn dish detergent works wonders. And only one side of these stick and stays are sticky. So I'm going to wash it, put a piece of paper towel down, and then tap it dry. Lift up my paper towel and I'm ready to go again. My buttercream does crust, so after I get about 2 done, I'm going to take a moment just to tap down any of the rough ridges. If I wait too late, like royal icing, it hardens too much and I won't be able to tap that down. And if I see any little spots where my fondant, where my pattern's gone off my stencil piece onto the fondant, this is a great opportunity just to come back and rub those off. Sometimes you'll find that the finer little tiny holes do not translate, like it doesn't come loose. And then I just use a bag with a tiny number 1 tip and I will repipe those on. If you don't have a way to lift, like you can't get underneath the stick and stay, your needle will help you get underneath the top edge. What do you guys think of the stick and stays?
I like it.
I do too.
Mine is not sticking, and I've tried it both sides.
If it's not sticking, it's because it has buttercream attached to the back side, and it would be time to rewash it.
Okay. Where do we wash it? That sink or the other?
Either.
Oh, okay.
So you can see how the applications for this, like there's so many different things you can do. And then I never leave it straight stencil. I always have to come back and do some embellishments just to add dimension. You can add pearls and rhinestones and gems. But it's an easy way to add lots of pattern.
You said that you go, let me ask you this question. You said that you go back and you sometimes take a number one tip.
Hmm?
Is that what you do?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
See that.
like, I think the stencil by itself is pretty,
Okay.
but coming back and embellishing it.
Okay.
So I love putting in the 3-dimension pieces. So like little tiny piped pearls.
Is it okay if I get up close and watch?
Yeah. I also like to come through and add, maybe I want to add a little bit of height
Okay.
right there. So I'll do like a little tiny piping. Just
You're
remember,
kinda fixing it up.
I'm adding height to
Yeah.
that stencil, yeah. And just remember, whatever you do on this one, you have to do on the next 40 around the cake.
And it's the same icing, exactly.
It is,
Buttercream,
it is.
okay.
And you can do this in royal icing. And you can do this in royal icing on royal icing. You can do this in ganache. You can do this with just about anything that is this consistency. And then let's say I want a little embellishment right here. Or I can go get candy pearls and put candy pearls right in this space.
So that's how you get that three-dimensional.
Yeah, you have to add to it. So, you know, you can create some little scroll pieces that come off of here. But remember, whatever you do on the one, you've got to repeat over and over.
And then you suffer from decoratoritis too, when you're like, okay, I need to stop.
Yeah.
Because I've done too much.
Like, how many of these do I have to put? And you can overpipe with other colors too. So if you're doing, let's say this is a red, black, and white, so you can use black details or black pearls.
I mean, I guess it's like if you kind of mess up on one little edge, that you kind of clean it up.
Yeah. Yes.
And not have to.
Yeah, you don't have to throw it out. Just clean it up and work with it some more.
Okay, that's such a great idea. Do they make circular stencils that you could put on the top of the cake, 8 or 9 or 10 inches, and just go in one big swath?
They don't, but you know what? With that stencil cutter,
You
I can
could.
start making them.
That would sure make it easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
Is your stencil cutter, what brand is it?
It's a glow forge.
Okay.
And part of the reason I went for the glow forge is it will recognize hand drawings. So it doesn't have to be CAD art. It can be a hand-drawn piece in like black magic marker, and we can translate that.
I almost suffered for one on HSN the other day.
On a,
It looked so easy and good, but the reviews were bad, so
Oh.
I didn't get one.
yeah, I definitely look for good reviews.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, either way, I think they both
But
look
they're
good.
tempting. They're also really expensive, the good ones, aren't they?
They are. So now we,
Yeah.
yeah, and let me take a look.
I was gonna show you, see, I kinda scraped that off more.
Yeah,
And then I left that on, I'm like, oh, okay.
I would probably keep the same consistency all the way through. Also, keep in
Yeah.
mind, if you're using a dark fondant underneath white, tomorrow it will bleed through and you will lose some of your,
Okay.
yeah. So I usually say, if you're going to do something like this, you need the icing to be fairly thick.
Okay.
Yep, still sticky.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
That's
is.
great.
Isn't that cool? And then I just put it back on the acetate backs and save it for the next time around. Any questions on the stick and stays at this point? Any questions on stenciling in general at this point?
Are we gonna do or talk about, stenciling with color, like paintbrush colors, or just icing?
We can definitely do paintbrush colors too. And
Because
I'll
I
do,
have tried those on Christmas cookies with the hard royal icing,
Uh-huh.
it gets hard, and it's just a mess. And I know it's operator error, but you know, it bleeds, it's just,
no, it's probably
never
going,
pretty.
it probably is going to bleed if you're using something that's very wet, like
Okay.
water wet. I would probably end up using a high pigment color diluted slightly with Everclear, so
Okay.
that I know that the Everclear is going to evaporate off without pitting or eating into my royal icing.
Okay.
And then if I'm doing airbrush color, it's going to be a light amount of color. It's going to be a gentle airbrush and then let it dry a little bit and do a little more gentle airbrush until I build up the color versus saturating it.
You're not gonna get a Christmas red, right?
Yeah, you gotta work at it. Now, everybody has a styrofoam in front of you, and it's because I really wanted you to get the feel of having to stretch a stencil around. That's probably one of the biggest challenges, is getting a stencil to attach to your cakes. And really, it's a matter of finding a stencil material, and I'm going to demonstrate this one. You see how when I pull on this, it pops out? That's going to be a real challenge to actually stencil. Has to do with mill thickness, or how thick this plastic is, and that's what we're doing right now, is we're trying to determine through product development what the best thickness is. And a finer or a softer thickness will stretch around a surface versus trying to pop off the surface. So we're trying to find a thinner plastic. So plastic type does matter. But let's say you love this. All you would need to do is put more pins in place to hold that down. And you're probably going to have to hold it. Nobody wants to do this. Hold it while you're spatulaing. But you can do it. You can do it if you have patience. The stick pins for something like this, the bigger pattern, I literally just go all the way around, popping in a pin, pop in a pin, pop in a pin, until I have most of that in place. And then I'll work my spatula around those pins for the most part. You're gonna find that as you start adding the buttercream or royal icing, the stencil starts sticking in place. It's just when it's clean and dry that it doesn't want to hold in spots. So pretty quickly, as you start applying, you can start pulling pins out and working these challenging areas.
You pin it top and bottom?
I pin it wherever it's trying to pop loose. And it depends on the type of plastic.
Okay.
Do you pre-hole, make holes before you even attach it? Because like earlier when I was putting it in, the way it drove that
It did.
corner into the fondant. so-
Ours will. So yes, the answer is yes. If you can go ahead and pre-poke a
Pre-poke
hole.
holes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do you want to attempt to wrap it around the styrofoam and put, yeah.
Leave our signs on, or do we wipe that off?
You can set it behind you if you want, but now is an opportunity to play with stencil on a
just on
styrofoam.
that. Oh,
Mhm.
gotcha. Okay.
And then,
Kind of messy.
which one do you like better?
I like
All
flowers.
right. Which one do you have? That one?
Okay.
We all have a long stencil to play with? Yeah.
Pretty long, halfway, almost half.
Yep. And yeah, just like that. I just pin it.
And then move it.
Mhm.
Is that what that little hole was for?
No, that's just for hanging purposes. Don't I wish?
Do we just have 2 pins?
We do for the moment, but I can definitely pass out more. That is not a problem.
Would you normally use more
I would, especially with a really long piece like yours. I would stretch it as far as I could get it.
Okay.
And then you'll want to try to line this right up at the edge of the bottom of your styrofoam or cake, and then pin it. And then I would probably do one more up in the top area somewhere. And now it should pretty much stay in place, ready for you to start.
I'll take a couple extra if you have.
Yes. Thank you. And keep in mind too, for us, we're not going to be able to pick up cake to do this. So ways to make this a little bit easier, tall turntables. So I will use a tall turntable, and then I will use buckets or tubs, and I will raise my cake up to my level. Once I get it closer to my level, it's a lot easier for me to manipulate the spatula. So I can get in now here, whereas down here, I'm having to like lift and turn. So I can get closer to it. And I can set myself up for success by getting where I can get my finger and wrist manipulated around that cake.
Should we use the squeegee on this too, or is the spatula good enough?
That's up to you. So the squeegee is there just to knock down some of the lumps and unevenness. Something else that's important too with repeats, making sure that you always put the stencil same side up. Because we have in the past accidentally turned our stencil and they were like, oh wait, my pattern doesn't match anymore.
Well, that is so cool.
Lifting. Don't forget your Viva paper towel can knock down any of the larger pieces. And so this particular stencil that I have is a cookie stencil. It's designed to be flat. So I am using it's a plastic that's thicker, designed to be flat. As I wrap it around even a small circle, my little pieces want to pop up. Oh, that's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. Those flowers are so pretty.
We're gonna have to show that off for sure.
Yeah, I guess so. But that is pretty. Very
Do you
pretty.
recommend doing this on, or does it matter, fondant or royal or,
This works best on fondant.
okay.
It also works great buttercream on buttercream. You would need to chill your buttercream cake, chill it well. That way you don't move the buttercream layers underneath when you're adding. Yeah, I'm going to try, like if I put my buttercream right in this space, see if I can get those little pieces to lay flat.
Do you do a lot of stenciling on your?
I love stencils. It's a great way to put fast pattern, and then all I have to do is come back through and overpipe and embellish. Most of the work is done for me. I get dimension and it's beautiful. Like that is stunning.
That is, it's beautiful. That really is good.
We're gonna show off your pattern real quick.
That's beautiful.
I'm gonna take it right up here to the camera. Yeah. So
Yeah, it is pretty.
it picked up all of that detail and pattern. And you know what I love about this? Is I don't have to worry about getting straight lines in that diamond. The stencil does it for me.
So pretty.
I love that.
Aw, that looks great too.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
Little dragons and all those flowers.
That's evil. That's like asking dragées all over. I'm like, no. But yeah, it would be beautiful with dragées in the center of each.
For geometric, yeah.
Yeah.
Turned out.
I love this Moroccan pattern too.
Yeah, that was really pretty.
Now, if you can do multicolor, you just have to be really careful.
Masking tape.
Yeah, masking tape would be the perfect. Something else you can do is if you have your own personal design you want us to create, we can do it in 3 different cuts of stencil. So we can have a artwork, and then I can cut everything that you want to be one color, and then I can cut a repeat
So it's like a
stencil.
screen print for a t-shirt.
Exactly.
Put one and then do the color and then do 2.
You have to let it dry between and.
And you'll, part of the stencil will cover up what you've already colored.
Mhm. Just like silk screen t-shirt. When they do multicolor, yeah, that's all they're doing is they put the ink on, then they take that one off, put a new pattern on, put the next color in.
So this guy is being a little bit finicky since it is the heavier plastic. Those little individual pieces are definitely popping up. So I know I have buttercream wedged underneath that section right there. So softer plastic works better when you're looking for something to go around a curve. But this firmer plastic works great for flat surfaces like your cookies. And then you could do exactly the same thing if you're worried about all the excess. Just a flat spatula, just very gently take off the excess. And then cross your fingers. Take out both pins. And then lift. Smaller circles are always more challenging than wider circles because there's so much more bend to the surface area. And then your Viva paper towel, just to knock off any of the excess loops.
Yeah, it still looks really pretty. So pretty.
Ta-da! So that's the gist of that type of stenciling. And then let's talk about,
White on white is very forgiving.
right. Pattern is also important for height of your cakes. Obviously this pattern is too large to fit this. I would totally do a double barrel, that way I could actually get this on this design. If we wanted to do paintbrush, generally it's like stippling. I like softer stencils for that because it attaches easier to the surface, and I know I'm not going to have too much movement. So stick and stays are perfect. Then I'm going to take a paintbrush or a sponge, or we did have, we're out of them right now, we had those soft little round sponges on the end, and you would create your painter's palette, and then I prefer to use straight up gel and add a little bit of Everclear and dilute the color that way. Artisan Accents is still my favorite pigment color right now. And then I would put my stipple brush into that, and I would probably dab off most of it on a paper towel, and then you go straight at the stencil. You can't brush it, you can't go top and bottom, because what happens is that's when the bleeding comes under. You gotta go straight at the item. You can even,
How you use this Everclear that you talked
Everclear is just for dilution purposes.
about? You mix that into your gel.
Yes.
Okay.
And what happens is, since it's a high alcohol content, it evaporates off.
Okay.
Whereas if you're diluting with water, it takes a while to, evaporate.
Okay.
So it runs down the cake.
So I did it with vodka, so it's about the same thing.
Yeah, and Everclear is even higher in alcohol content, so you are guaranteed for greater evaporation. Vodka's nice, but if you're looking for fast, yeah. So let me grab a painter's palette real quick. And I'm going to show you how to use this just like with paper towel. If you don't have a sponge and you're needing to do this quick, you could do it with a paper towel. And what color do you want? Purple.
So you just get the Everclear at the liquor store?
Mm-hmm.
They think you're hardcore.
Right?
I'll go into the liquor store hungry.
I come in like this, you know, I'm like 6 bottles across, and they're like, what are you doing? I promise, we're eating it. Yeah.
That's vodka.
That's vodka.
That was vodka.
That's vodka. So I'm out of Everclear right now. So if I were to, let's see if I have any stiples in here. I don't think so, but I do have sponges. Sponges are tricky. You should know in the food industry, sponges are a little tricky because if you use a natural sponge, it does not sanitize. So you've got to use a artificial sponge that can be bleached. I think all of my soft sponges are being used. All right. We'll use a paintbrush. So pigment, a little bit of the Everclear vodka. And then if you're doing with a brush, you're gonna go flat against it. And I've got way too much liquid in there, so you're gonna see it's gonna run underneath. See how it's already starting to run? So you need to dry your brush. See if I can get this cleaned off and back on there.
Karen, you wanna use a different one?
Do what? Yeah, thanks. So if you're using the paintbrush, take a minute and dry your bristles. It's not wanting to stick the cornstarch.
Oh.
I have cornstarch on that still. Let's see if I can just reuse this one. All right, dry your brush and then come back through and dab straight down. And then probably have to go at it like you would with a stipple brush. Airbrush is 10 times easier, but you run the risk of overspray.
How much do the airbrush spray things cost?
It depends on what brand you're getting. Anywhere from $1.99 to, you know, I've got a really nice one. It was like $3.49.
Actually, I found one on Amazon for like $60.
That's awesome.
It is. It's got a really small reservoir though.
$60? Is that what you mean?
It's like 60 or 70. Sometimes you can find them on sale. It's not like a, I think it'd be right on the tax.
So definitely want to make sure you do the stipple.
Can you turn that pretty? Just, yeah, oh, that's pretty, yeah.
All right, any questions on coming back through with color? So that you can really control color. So I love that Art Deco one. I would put it on and I would do like some pinks and purples and maybe fade off into olives and blues. So you can play around with the sponging. What other questions?
Is there any, back to the royal icing on cookies,
Uh-huh.
would you recommend just doing a buttercream over the royal or gel color? What would you recommend?
I
for
would
best
do
success?
colored royal icing.
Colored royal icing, okay.
Yep.
And use the same technique you're doing there with gel, just stipple it on?
No, I would stencil it on by scraping it
Okay.
on like this.
Okay.
That's going to reduce the amount of bleed that you're
Okay.
seeing.
All
Just basically using colored royal icing on top of your other royal icing. That's the way I would do it.
Okay.
You could also airbrush it, just really lightly. And the can propellant sprays work well too. Just gotta make sure you pin down your stencil so it doesn't fly away, or use something. We've got the Stencil Genie out here. We've also got Sweet Sugar Bell stencil, like canvas matte thing. I don't know what it's called, but like the frame. It's like a frame.
I got a magnet set with my stencils that I ordered, and so it'll
Hold it together. Yep.
hold it, you know, if you're putting it on a metal, certain like a cookie sheet, the magnet will help hold those corners down.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and both of those stencil holders out there, both frames have magnets. Do the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
What else? Did I miss anything?
Covered a lot.
All right.
Yeah, it was so much more confident.
All right.
Trying this at home,
And
definitely.
lift straight up when you're pulling your stencil off. Don't try to lift it to the side because then it just scrapes everything down the side of your cake. And then be sure to stay in the lines with your spatula. Stay in the border so it doesn't scrape over the outside edge.
Do you ever, on a very small one, just do it with your fingertips?
Sure.
Okay.
Fingertip. That's why I like just the coupler.
Uh-huh.
Then I just go brrrt and pull it off. But I want to control the thickness. So sometimes the coupler isn't as easy to control as spatula thickness.
Yeah, you can get the real small palette knives too.
Oh yeah, I forgot those. Yeah, palette knives are perfect. Yeah.
Even the other ones.
Yep.
And on your color there, I didn't see what you did. Did you put the alcohol in the center hole and then you added the color to it? Or did you just
I had
dip
some
your
splash
brush?
over. I did the gel over here, and then I pulled some of the alcohol toward it.
So you just need a small amount of alcohol per gel.
Correct. And you're going to dry most of your brush off
Okay.
before you start stippling.
Okay.
And if you want a darker color, we use the Artisan Accent colors because I like the fluidity of it already. You might not even need the alcohol. You might just go straight gel,
Okay.
and then you know for sure it's not going to run off.
What is the purpose of the alcohol in there?
Evaporation. So if you're needing a more opaque or a softer color, you need to dilute it down. So to get a softer purple, I basically have to add a dilution to it. If you use water, water doesn't evaporate, it just runs down the side of your cake, especially if you're doing buttercream. So the trick is to use something with a high alcohol content that will evaporate out very quickly right after putting the stippling on. That's it?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
How do you want us to clean up our little nest?
Well, you guys are welcome to take your fondant home if you want to put it back into your tubs. And then you can either keep or toss the little rounds that went under. I'm just going to keep the styrofoams and the stencils.
Should we clean them off in the sink or just leave them?
You can just leave them there. I'll take care of them. I want to thank anybody who joined us on YouTube today. Thank you so much for joining us live and watching all things stenciling. This will post and be up there if you guys want to review this. You can also add comments to YouTube Live, just like you can Facebook Live. So I'm happy to answer any comments or questions that you might have. If you haven't already, go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We're still in the process of trying to get our own name. So right now it says YouTube / and a whole bunch of weird letters, numbers, and characters. I can't remember it. So in order to have that / art is in cakes, we have to have 100 subscribers to start with. So, yep.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.